everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this video we'll be continuing our Canada and Alaska series by looking at our road trip and in particular our time in Canmore and Banff. In this video I'll talk through how we spent our days in this gorgeous area and cover some of the things you can get up to with some tips thrown in along the way. Our road trip began with 3 nights in Calgary, followed by 3 more in Canmore. Our original plan was to stay in Banff rather than Canmore. However, we found that the prices in Banff were really expensive and above what we wanted to spend, so we found somewhere more reasonable in Canmore, which is just 20 minutes southeast of Banff. This region of Alberta and British Columbia is home to the Rocky Mountains and numerous national parks. Canmore actually sits just outside of the first and one of the most famous, Banff National Park. Then just north of here is Jasper National Park, and these are the two that most people will head for. As well as these, there's Kootenay National Park and Yoho National Park to the west, where you may go through if you're headed to Golden. Then further west still are Glacier National Park and Mount Revelstoke National Park, which again you might need to go through on your way from Golden to Kamloops. To access these national parks you need a parks entry pass. These can be purchased at the park gates, visitor centres, campgrounds and other locations. We pre-purchased ours online and printed it off as you need to show these on the dashboard of your car. As we were travelling through many of these parks over a few days, we got a 4-day pass to cover us all the way from Canmore to Kamloops, which came to $88 for the 4 of us, or around £50. Also note that the passes expire at 4 PM on the day of departure, so take this into account when working out how many days cover you need to purchase. So back to our trip, we left Calgary pretty early and started the drive out to Canmore. The drive takes a little over an hour, maybe an hour and a half if you carry straight on to Banff like we did. After around 30 minutes you start seeing the mountains in the distance and the scenery really changes and becomes pretty spectacular. This is also where we started trying to spot wildlife by the road, but this stretch of highway has big fences either side, so it's a little bit harder here. We did manage to spot 1 elk though as we drove quickly past. We set off from Calgary a little earlier than planned and had most of the day, so we decided to spend it in Banff. We purchased an extra day in the national park at the park gates and headed on in. There's loads of free parking at the train station, and we arrived around midday and there were still loads of spaces. It's then just a 5-minute walk from here into the centre of town, and it's a lovely walk along Elk Street to the main street, Banff Avenue. The town is absolutely beautiful. It's a lovely place to spend time, with loads of hotels, shops, restaurants, with amazing mountain views all around you. We wandered down the avenue a little and stopped for lunch at Farm and Fire Kitchen, which had brilliant food and was really reasonably priced at around $110 for the 4 of us, so we'd really recommend stopping in here. We carried on down Banff Avenue, doing a bit of shopping, picking up some souvenirs and treats. There are loads of chocolate and sweet shops, lots of bakeries, and the kids loved it. I tried a beaver tail, which is a famous local delicacy, and it was delicious. Definitely a must try if you're here. A good portion of the avenue was pedestrianised, which made it a lovely place to stroll and take everything in. We picked up some bear spray in the mini mall here, the Cascade shops. There's a pharmacy on the ground floor that sold it over the counter for around $60, so it's not cheap, but it's important to have if you'll be out walking at all. There are videos and guides on the National Park's website on how to use it effectively if you do encounter a bear. Further down the avenue you come to a crossroads and the bridge to cross over the river. Off to the right is a museum, restrooms and a small park which the kids enjoyed. And you can also join the river trail here, which leads down to Bow Falls a little further down the river. Across the bridge is the Cascade of Thyme Gardens, which are free to enter and are lovely ornamental gardens set around the Banff National Park Administration Building, with views back down Banff Avenue and to the mountains beyond. We spent some time here in the sun, sitting and eating some of the snacks we'd picked up along the way, and then started back up Banff Avenue. Until now, the weather had been lovely and sunny, but as we found during our time here, the weather can turn quickly in the mountains, and the clouds came over and the rain came down, so we ended up running back to the car, absolutely drenched. But still, we'd had a lovely first day in Banff and decided we'd definitely spend more time here over the next few days. On the way back, we detoured a little to make a quick stop at the Bow Falls Viewpoint on the edge of town. The rain had eased a little by now, enough that we could park up and take a little look and get some nice pictures. To get to Bow Falls, you drive south across the bridge over the river. It's not far at all, and very near to the Fairmont Hotel. But we found the traffic across the bridge to be really congested. Speaking to locals later in the trip, this is a common problem when the main avenue is pedestrianised, so keep this in mind if you're driving in the area. There's just a small car park here at Bow Falls and it's very popular, so fills up. We had to wait a few minutes but eventually got a space and could explore a little. The waterfall is stunning, so it's worth the trip, or the walk from town if you have better weather. There's a footpath and steps up the side of the waterfall so you can get multiple vantage points. And we also saw people rafting and canoeing both up and downstream, so this looks to be an option if it's something you're interested in. We then made a quick stop at Surprise Corner. This is basically just the opposite side of the river, but from the raised viewpoint here you can look back to see the famous Fairmont Hotel with some amazing views. It's about a 5 to 10 minute drive from Bow Falls Viewpoint, but it took us a bit longer with the traffic. Again, there's a tiny car park, enough for just a couple of cars, so we waited a little and then hopped out to get our pictures and take in the views. We decided then to call it a day and head to Canmore to check into our hotel and get some dinner. We booked a stay at the Canmore Coast Hotel, which is fairly central in Canmore, just a couple of minutes walk to the main street. There are loads of hotels in Canmore, all pretty reasonably priced compared to Banff, and it's a lovely town. We found it really convenient and a good base for the area, so well worth the savings we made. This was booked as part of our package with Trailfinders, so we don't have a cost breakdown, but we know it's considerably cheaper than staying in Banff itself. The hotel itself was very nice. We had lovely service, grounds and reception area were really nice, with a decent indoor pool and hot tub that we all enjoyed. The room was clean, but perhaps more on the basic side, probably akin to a Premier Inn standard and quality for those of you from the UK. All very comfortable and clean, but the bathroom was fairly basic. Still, we were really comfortable here and it did the job for the 3 nights we were here, with plenty of parking and not too far from the highway to Banff. We spent the evening getting settled in at the hotel with dinner in the hotel restaurant. This was a great menu, great service, really good food and reasonably priced at around $120 for the 4 of us. We generally found a sit-down meal was coming out at around $100 to $120 or around the £60 mark, which was pretty good compared to what we budget for our trips when we visit the USA. We spent the next 2 days in and around the Banff area, as well as taking a trip to Lake Louise a little further north. I'll cover our time in Lake Louise in next week's vlog when we ventured further north from Canmore. But we found it really easy to get about and explore the area, and Canmore was a great base for this. On the first of our 2 days, we headed off to Lake Louise, setting off early and leaving there to come back to Banff and Canmore at around 3 p.m. There are basically 2 routes connecting Banff and Lake Louise, the Trans-Canada Highway and then the Bow Valley Parkway, which runs parallel to the highway most of the way. However, it's a little bit quieter and more scenic, and we'd heard it was the best route for spotting some wildlife, including bears, so we took this route on the way back. There's a couple of good stop-offs on this route, including the Morants Curve viewpoint, and we were lucky enough to spot a train as it went by, so great timing as people can wait hours to capture this. The drive itself was lovely. if a little windy if you get car sick, but incredibly scenic and much closer to the forest. We did spot a couple of elk on the way, but no bears unfortunately, and we arrived back in Banff around 5 p.m. We decided before dinner we'd drive the Lake Minnewanka scenic drive just north of town while we were here. Banff has a series of lakes located just north of the town centre, which are connected by the Lake Minnewanka scenic drive. This begins with Cascade Ponds, Johnston Lake, Two Jack Lake, and then finally Lake Minnewanka. This is a lovely area to come and spend the day if you have time. Each lake has a parking lot, but these do fill up fast. You can actually get live updates for the parking around the area at parks.canada.ca/Banff Now, which we found really useful while we were driving around. Out on the lakes you can go canoeing, swimming despite the freezing water, and you can also take a boat trip out on Lake Minnewanka, although it does look a bit windy and choppy. Cascade Ponds was probably our favourite, with lovely bridges linking the ponds, shallower water that the kids could paddle in, and a lovely grassy area where you could have a picnic and spend the day comfortably. With another day in the area, we probably would have spent it out here, but we only had time for a quick look on this occasion. We'd also heard this driving loop was a good place to spot wildlife too, but unfortunately we didn't see anything this time. So then it was time for some dinner. We headed back to Canmore and stopped at a local Indian restaurant, the Spice Hut, which had been recommended to us and was brilliant. Then we got some pool time in before bed so the kids could blow off some steam after quite a bit of driving. It had been a day of driving, perhaps a little too much, so we spent the next day more local around the Banff and Canmore area rather than venturing further away. We started the day at the Banff Gondola and Hot Springs. Both of these are basically located next to one another just outside of town. They do have decent sized parking lots, but they fill up fast due to their popularity. If you can't get parked here, there are roam buses from town. The Banff area has a pretty good network of roam buses connecting the main sites and attractions. However, because we were visiting early, these weren't all that frequent or convenient. The hot springs also can't be booked in advance and queues can build up here. So we decided we'd do both of these attractions first thing in the morning to try and get parked and beat the queues. We started with the gondola as the springs didn't open until 10 a.m. We'd pre-booked our tickets on their website to try and avoid queuing, which did come in really handy, and arrived just after 9 a.m, by which time the parking lot was already pretty full. We were a little early but were able to head straight up on the gondola early and were whisked up to the top. You get brilliant views of the surrounding mountains and back down to the town of Banff, so it's a lovely ride. Then at the top there's a little visitor centre with a shop, cafe and a boardwalk. It was pretty cold and windy at the top, so we didn't spend long here, maybe only around 30 minutes to take a look and get some pictures, and the kids didn't fancy walking the boardwalk, so we left that. Then we headed back down. There are a few gondolas in the area that you can do, and Banff is on the more expensive end of the scale at around £85 for the four of us. For us, it was a case of we'd come all this way and we wanted to do it, but I wouldn't have it down as a must-do as it is a little bit expensive. Still, we did enjoy our time here, so can't complain. There's a Starbucks in the visitor centre at the bottom, so we grabbed a quick breakfast and then we walked over to the hot springs over the road. The hot springs are one of several geothermally heated pools in the area, with one up near Jasper and another in Radium. This one is fairly small, so does fill up, but it's lovely and warm and it has amazing views of the mountains all around. It was around 10:20 a.m. now and was already getting busy despite only being open for 20 minutes, so we were pleased we'd gone early. The price for entry was around $70 for the four of us, including towels and lockers, and you can rent swimsuits if you want as well. The changing rooms were very nice, so you can lock everything away while you swim. It was all very easy. As I said, the pool is pretty small, so it was quite busy, but it was lovely to relax in and spend some time. We're fortunate enough to have visited the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, which is a similar premise but leagues ahead of this in terms of size, theming and how enjoyable it was. Banff Hot Springs was still fun to do, and it's worth stopping by if you're visiting. We spent around half an hour in there. It was really hot at 40 degrees, so we didn't want to spend too long in the water. With the gondola and hot springs done, we then drove into town, parked at the station again and spent the rest of the afternoon exploring Banff. We enjoyed some lunch at a restaurant called Melissa's Mistake, another good spot to eat at around $110 for the four of us, and then did a little bit more shopping, including at the farmers market which was taking place down by the park. The kids enjoyed some treats and fresh fruit, and we picked up some local ciders for later, and it was a really lovely afternoon. On the way back out of town, we made sure to stop at the town sign, which you've probably seen in lots of pictures online. This is very close to the train station and has a parking lot just over the road, so it's really easy to park up and take your pictures, although there's normally a short queue to get to the sign itself. We knew that the next few days ahead would be pretty busy and full on, so we decided not to cram anything else in Banff and instead headed back to the hotel to enjoy some pool time. For dinner we headed into Canmore as we hadn't really explored the town yet. It's just a short walk from the hotel to the town centre, just over the main road, and then you join up with the Policeman Creek Boardwalk, which takes you down to the main street. The Policeman's Creek Walk is a scenic trail from downtown Canmore that takes you alongside the creek out of town and back again, with a total distance of around 4 kilometres. We only walked a small portion of it, but it was a lovely stroll, and we were told you can often see elk and deer even in the middle of town. The walk takes you to the giant head statue, which is the top of the main street filled with shops and restaurants. It's a really lovely town centre, similar to Banff but a little bit smaller and lower key. Very nice for a stroll, and we had a lovely evening doing some shopping and having dinner at the Grizzly Brew pub. Again, this was a great menu and pretty reasonable at $110 for the four of us. The next day it was time to head off and move to Golden, which I'll cover later in the series. However, on the way we made a stop at the Bow Valley Parkway on the way up towards Lake Louise. We wanted to make sure that we did at least one hike on this trip and decided that Johnston Canyon looked pretty good. This is a fairly flat hike to the waterfall and back that takes around an hour. It's a really popular trail and it's really busy, so we'd read that the chances of running into any bears were slim, so it seemed the perfect hike for us. Johnston Canyon is around 40 minutes from Canmore, so it was a good place to break up the journey. The parking lot does fill up fast. We arrived at 8:45 AM and it was nearly full, but we parked up and got on our way. The route is paved most of the way, generally very flat, and runs alongside the river through the forest all the way up to the falls themselves. It takes around 30 minutes each way to the lower falls. The only downside really was that the falls themselves get incredibly busy, so to get up close near the caves and to get proper pictures you had to stand in a really long queue. We didn't fancy waiting in the crush, so we got some shots from a distance, which was enough for us, and then made our way back. It's a very doable walk, very family friendly, and it fit in really well, so it's a good one to do even if you're not normally into long hikes. And with that, we moved on north to explore further on our way to Golden. We'd had a lovely time in Canmore and Banff. Both are beautiful towns, and it was great to spend some time here. The 3 nights here felt about right for us. We could have maybe filled another day or two, perhaps with some more time at the lakes around Banff, and we didn't visit the Cave and Basin historical site as we didn't have time. But otherwise, everything fit very nicely for us. The one thing that was a tad disappointing was not seeing any bears, from a safe distance of course. We did consider an evening wildlife safari and maybe in hindsight wished we'd done one. But from the reviews it sounded like you visit a lot of the places we saw ourselves, so I don't know how good it would have been. It's something to look into though if you're particularly keen on seeing some wildlife while you're here. And that wraps up our time in Banff and Canmore. If there's anything you want to ask or anything we missed, then please let us know in the comments below. Next week we'll continue the series covering our road trip from Canmore onto Golden via the Columbia ice fields, as well as our time in Lake Louise. If you like this video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe to the channel as it really makes a big difference. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or any other tips, just let us know. Thank you all so much for watching.